All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Bulletproof Dental Practice Podcast. Today, Craig and I are super excited to have the one and only Cory Glenn, who we've attempted to have on the podcast before, and through some technical snafus, we weren't able to do that. But Cory, we've been following you from afar, and if our listeners are at all been following the digital workflow space, Cory, you're kind of plotting the path in which dentistry is headed, and I knew of you long before just we connected personally, just watching YouTube videos and what you were doing, and just looking at the workarounds and the digital workflows and the stuff you're doing, and it's pretty cool. And so right now, Cory's visiting us from we were just talking before hit record from his mad scientist workshop, man cave. Right. Where all the magic kind of happens. And Cory, you live in Winchester, Tennessee, is that right?
I do, yeah. Winchester, Tennessee, a little small town in southern middle Tennessee.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking at your bio here on the Blue Sky bio, and obviously you're an avid fisherman, father of 3. You got the life, man. You got the life. I love it. And
yeah.
So give us a little bit quick genesis of kind of why you're doing what you're doing, how you got here. I know you had a practice for a while and you sold it, you said just recently. So give a quick rundown if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. So I graduated in 2008, did a 1-year residency, and then came to Winchester and had a solo private practice right out of the gate. And so got really busy. We're doing great with the practice and everything. Was starting to do a lot of the digital kind of stuff, and was just posting that everywhere. I guess that's kind of what, made people get to know who I was. Mm-hmm. And right as all that was taking off, I was just, burning the candle at both ends, just doing way too much. And I just got really run down and wasn't feeling good. Back was just killing me. I couldn't hardly, get through a work day. And if I did, I had to come home and just lie flat on the floor. So anyway, I finally went to the doctor because I was having just the back pain, some weird symptoms. And that was 2012, I believe, end of 2012. And they actually discovered I had leukemia. So,
oh, shit.
Yeah, that was kind of a big surprise and a big wake-up call. So,
wait, sorry, Cory. So you graduated in 2008?
Yep.
How old are you right now?
I am 36.
Oh, young dude. Okay, got it. So you got out of school in 2008, 2012. 4 years later, you find out you have leukemia, huh?
That doesn't sound right. 2015 is more accurate.
Okay, so
3 years ago. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, no worries. Got it. I'm sorry.
But still, quick out of the gates, essentially.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So was it related to your back? Like, was that a correlation, or was just serendipity? They found it kind of.
It's hard to say. They still don't know 100% what's going on with it. Long story short, they treated the leukemia, and I'm all good on that front, but the back pain just never really got better, which is what led to me eventually having to sell the practice. But what the cause of it is, a couple of the doctors I've seen have said, basically when you were diagnosed, all of your bone marrow was eaten up with leukemia cells, and it kind of caused, just a little bit of collapse, essentially. So I've heard that. I've heard maybe it's just nerve damage from the chemo. We don't know what the heck's wrong with me, but, all in all, I could be dead, so I'm not going to complain too much.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that with us, honestly. That, obviously that's pretty private and personal, but I appreciate you kind of being vulnerable and sharing that. That's cool.
Oh, no worries.
But nothing. What am I trying to say? You wouldn't be in this situation now if you were running a full clinical schedule. So I think God has a plan for everything, kind of thing.
For sure. And, I was very fortunate to have this to fall back on, and I do miss clinical a lot, but at the same time, I don't want to have to come home and be taking narcotics just to function at night and play with my kids. So this has been a great thing as well. I love what I'm doing now. It's afforded me, a little more flexibility for travel and to pursue the teaching and stuff. So it's worked out.
Yeah, I think it's just interesting because I'm coming off the heels of a good buddy of mine, my buddy Mark, super fit guy, 46 years old, has a 6-week-old baby, brand new baby. And 4 weeks ago, he had just like a little lump in his neck. And he, fast forward now, he's got tonsillar cancer, which I think all of our colleagues we need to pay special attention to, because white middle-aged males, it's actually related from HPV.
HPV, right? Yeah.
The amount of tonsillar and pharyngeal cancer for males is skyrocketing. So fast forward, he's got a feeding tube, a chemo port, and he's going to get his butt kicked. You got a good prognosis, but it's terribly painful. You lose a lot of weight. He's going to go through all that stuff. But an interesting thing, and the reason why I'm bringing it up right now, is I met him because he had to get fluoride trays done, and he has to go through all that protocol with the dentist here.
Right.
And he said to me, he's like, Craig, I got to be honest with you. I'm happier now since my diagnosis than I've ever been. I'm upset about the cancer, and I don't wish cancer on anybody, but the context of cancer, the context of, in your case, leukemia, is so amazing, because we all are so upset because production, hygienist, blah, blah, blah. And then boom, something real comes along and you're like, God damn, I wish I could go back to yesterday or last week when all I was bitching about was this. But that context makes people so happy. And I agree with Pete. Thank you for saying that. I do believe that God put that in your path and directed you. Life happens for you and not just to you.
That 100% had that same shared experience. It's one of those deals that, like, it's kind of like dental school. I'm so glad I'm through it. I would never want to go have to do it again. But on the tail end of it, it's one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life, because it refocuses you on what's important. And I was giving up exercise and time with my kids and my sanity just so I could post some stupid technique I made up in Mesh Mixer on a Facebook forum. It's like, what's really important here?
Yeah, good for you.
It was a good wake-up call.
Good for you. And a good wake-up call for us as well. So thank you.
How old are your kids? And then we'll get into it. How old are your kids?
I've got 3 girls. They're 9, 7, and 5.
Oh, wow. So they're
same as Pete and I then. We're 4. I've got a 5 and an 8. Pete, you're 4 or 3? The twin?
743.
743, yeah.
Okay.
So, Cory, walk us through let's start with an overview, like a 30,000-foot view of kind of where the digital workflow is, where it's going. Craig and I talk, some of our most popular podcasts have been what we see the future of dentistry being. And this is an important component, the digital workflow, going from an analog to a digital workflow and disrupting the space. We talk about it in the context of how it weaves in and out with some bigger things we talk about in terms of like group practices and, the solo ownership. So it's a bigger conversation when we talk the future of dentistry, but from a clinical aspect, can you kind of walk us through, kind of elaborate on what you feel like the future of dentistry looks like, especially in the knowledge base that you have?
Yeah, for sure. So, obviously digital is nothing new. I mean, it's ever growing, but I think we're 30 years out now from the original CEREC. So there's nothing necessarily new under the sun, but what I do see being the big change going on right now is that it's finally getting accessible. It's finally getting to where you don't have to take out a second mortgage to be able to buy some machine that does this one task. Now we've got very affordable scanners. We've got very affordable 3D printing. We've got open source mills, and we've got the big thing that drew me into all of this was the software component. Is that now there's free softwares like Blue Sky, who I work with, that give me the ability now to do all of these things and then tie it together with these different open source technologies. And so that's been really exciting, because now if you buy a $5,000 3D scanner and let's say a $3,000 3D printer, man, you're into digital dentistry. There is a ton of stuff that you can do with that. Digital ortho, digital dentures, study models, digital wax ups. I mean, there's so many things that opens up to you. It's just incredible. And so
I'm glad I want to pause that for a second, Cory, because I'm glad that you mentioned that, because a lot of times we talk about digital and this, like, you got to have the CBCT, you got to have this scanner, you got to have the iTero, and you start adding it up and you're like, well, I can't get into the space for under $200,000. Right. But like you just said, like, you can start dabbling or tiptoeing or doing whatever. Like, you can enter the space for, let's call it $8,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so there's really it's not a barrier to entry for clinical dentists. It's maybe a time, and daunting from a time and a learning and a onboarding aspect, but it's not a cost impediment. And I'm glad you brought that up.
Right. I mean, there definitely are some big ticket items.
Yes, of course.
Filling, an intraoral scanner, or obviously the cone beam. Those are big ticket items, but man, those are not necessary to do any of this stuff. I mean, if you want to start doing your own clear aligner ortho in-house, you need the ability to take an alginate, pour up a stone model, and then you can use the scanner. For example, the Shining 3D scanner that I'm using, $5,000. You scan your stuff in. You can do your entire digital treatment planning in Blue Sky for virtually for free, or you can even push a button and outsource that. Someone else does it for you for $200. And then again, you take this super affordable 3D printer and print all your models and aligners and everything, and man, you're doing clear aligner ortho for under $300 a case. It's insane.
That is crazy. That's crazy. So are you a disciple of one of the printers? Like, I know a couple of guys and they actually have like a Moonray and a Formlabs. Like I'm actually listening to my Formlabs. Yeah. I don't do it, but my surgeon, I'm listening to him. I'm hearing it go woo, woo, like literally hearing the printer going right now as we speak. So
mine is going right now.
So that looks different than the one we have is a Formlabs. So can you talk about, I know maybe that's getting into the weeds a little bit, but I think it's important to talk about the pros and the cons real quickly about, it seems like there's 3 that are pretty prevalent in dentistry.
Yeah. So there's, the main one that I'm using and that I kind of steer everybody towards is the Moonray. The Moonray and Form 2, I think, are kind of the 2 biggest players right now in the dental space. And as far as a quality of print, I think they're both dead on par. I don't think you're going to see a discernible difference between them. One thing I like about the Moonray is that it seems to play nice with more materials. So Formlabs has kept a little bit more of a closed approach on what materials they'll develop profiles for, which is a pain in the butt. Because, for example, me, I'm developing the digital denture software. Well, they don't have a profile for the pink gingival base material or the crown and bridge material that you print the teeth out of. And so the Moonray it's just a really simple printer. It's very straightforward. There's not a learning curve with it, but probably the biggest selling point to me is that it does play nice with everything. And so, I think I'm up to like 7 printers. Let's see just what I have in here right now. I've got a Photon printer. That's the little $450 one. I've got the Jewel 3D, which is my $15,000 paperweight. Amazing at the time, but not something I'm using any longer. I've got the Moonray S, so that's kind of my workhorse. I've got a Maker Select.
You got a Gibson Les Paul. I saw that.
I've got a Gibson Les Paul, yes. There's the Maker Select. This is just an FDM printer. I've got a Robox dual material. I've got a Robox single material sitting around here somewhere. So, I mean, those are kind of the ones that I've played with and that I've been using, but for sure the Moonray, at least for me, is the main thing that's
really
getting my work done.
Okay. So if someone had to, if you had a recommendation, let's say I had zero knowledge in the space, I was a dentist and I wanted to enter, and I was able to buy one printer.
For me, it's Moonray right now.
Moonray, okay. Yeah.
And that can change tomorrow, but it's, for right now, that's what it is.
And it's not because of accuracy, it's because of materials.
No, it's because of materials and, the number of different things it'll do, speed of print. But again, it and Formlabs are pretty on par with quality and speed of print and all that kind of stuff. It's materials is a big limitation, I feel, right now for the.
What scanner are you using to capture the information?
All right, so I'll walk over and show you this too. This is.
I like this. We're getting a tour. Yeah. I love this.
I'm on the phone here. That's the only way I can get the camera to work. So you're going to get the walking tour. But yeah, this is the Shining 3D, and it's a cool little scanner. It's open.
That's a desktop scanner, right?
Yes, this is a lab style scanner. And so,
okay.
Obviously, I'm not practicing. So what do I need to do?
No, I know that some people use like a handheld scan.
Well, can't you use iTero or Sirona, like a CEREC scanner to scan the mouth and do
For sure. Yeah, you can do all of that. So the thing you get into though with intraoral scanners is just a much higher price tag. I know Medit just came out with one that's around 15,000. That's a pretty competitive price. I don't know a thing in the world about the scanner yet, but again, if we're talking about trying to minimize barriers to entry, I think this is a great starting point because this scanner, again, it's $5,000.
Show it again, Cory, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, it's just a small desktop lab style scanner.
And what's the name of it?
It's the Shining 3D DSEX. They clearly didn't run that through the English department. The D6, but
D6.
So yeah, but one of the cool things about this, and I think one of the easiest ways to make your money back is, yes, you can digitize any kind of models. You can scan impressions though. And so for like the last several months that I was practicing, we were able to, I've been down CEREC, we sold that. It worked great in its time, but we kind of went away from that. And this, we were able to just take a quick PVS impression, which frankly, I kind of like PVS impressions over intraoral scanning, but then we could take it straight out of the mouth and just scan it with this. It's scanned in 5 minutes.
Tell me why, Cory.
Digital.
I want to stop you there. Why you said you prefer PVS to digital scanning? Is that a time thing? Is it an accuracy thing?
It's one, the cost. I'm so sick of every company in dentistry wanting $400 a month for me. Because you got to belong to this club and that club, and stuff constantly breaks, and you got to get it serviced. So I was a little over that. The CEREC 2, I had bought one used, and it was a really good fit for me when we were doing 20, 25 crowns a month. And then we got busier beyond that. And I didn't have enough operatories to have the capacity for people to be sitting there for that extra down hour while it's being milled and glazed and all that. Because if I could stick another crown right there, then it makes no sense. I'm better off to take a PVS impression, get them back, 3 days later. So to me, I know a lot of people say they build their practice on the same day thing. Maybe it's just a small town, but my patient base just honestly, they didn't care that much.
Well, what I'm seeing a lot of is, I think there's two factors, and I'm really glad we're talking about this. I think that patient perception being scanned versus having an impression, that's an experience building, a patient building experience. That's number one. Number two, I do believe that there's plenty of courses out there that could take one of your Maverick assistants and turn them into CEREC designer scanner thing, and that could make it very efficient as well. Right. Having someone that's there, I'm a guy. I've got 3 iTeros and 2 CEREC scanners already. So what is that? I got $500,000-$600,000 in scanners. So, but we don't have a 3D printer, so like we're slowing down pretty good too as far as our processes go.
Yeah. I think it's one of those deals. If you're gonna do the same day dentistry stuff, you really kind of have to structure your practice around that.
Yeah.
I think you need extra operatories compared to a practice that is not trying to do that. Because again, if you've got the room for them to sit around, then heck, it makes all the sense in the world. What do you care if they sit there for an hour? But I didn't have it. And so when we got busy beyond that point, it made more sense to just say, come back here in a couple of days. And, I thought it would be a big deal. I mean, very few people even mentioned it or cared. Mm-hmm. And my costs and headache actually went down because we were just, to me, it's less demanding to take a PVS impression. If there's a little gingival tag, I squirt it out of the way and it captures it. Versus intraoral scanning, it partly does make you a better dentist because you now have to be more demanding of your isolation and your technique and all that kind of stuff. So PVS has always just been easy to me. I was using 2-minute set time, and then I can just directly scan that in the scanner.
When did that come out, Cory? When did scanning of impressions come out? You're talking to a dinosaur here with me. I hope there's a
well, it's been around forever,
right.
But very few dentists were messing with it for whatever
reason.
Well,
when did it get good? When did scanning of impressions get decent?
I don't know the real answer to that. I can only speak for when I got this, which was over a year ago.
Okay, and, so relatively new, like in the last 2-3 years.
Yes. I mean, again, it may have been around before then, but My experience with it is in using it for scanning triple tray impressions. And for that application, I feel like it's as good as intraoral scanning. And it's just super easy and it's cheap. I'm still getting the digital discount. I'm still getting a 3-day turnaround, just like I would if I was doing an intraoral scan, but without the upfront cost.
There's some people who may be like, some purist in the digital aspect that would say, well, you're losing a lot of data from the transformation of the acquisition of the data from the impression to the digital, as opposed to going purely to the digital. Right. So from an accuracy standpoint,
in theory.
Okay. And I don't know, honestly, again, I don't do this day to day. So, but I have heard that argument is that, going to a straight digital acquisition can improve the accuracy versus, any kind of artifact that may be, small micro artifact that may be present in a PVS. I don't know.
Well, just help me understand, because we're getting pretty down to the very granular level here. Peter, I know you appreciate when I use the word granular.
It's my favorite word.
And binary. But just back up a second. You're talking about taking a triple tray, making a 3D printed model, then sending that model out for an analog or digital crown to be fabricated off the model. Is that correct?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
talking about digitizing my workflow. So I never send a physical impression to the lab.
I understand.
Okay. So I take a physical impression, but then I just scan that. So the lab is going to make everything purely digital, which again, if you don't have model work, that's going to reduce your cost and your turnaround time. And so,
okay, so you're making a digital model that you don't print,
correct,
and you send that STL file to the lab.
Correct.
And then they can choose to either print or not print depending on what they want, and they'll send you back a digital crown, make it off the STL file.
Exactly. Yep.
Got it. So where does the printer fit into this?
For that, you don't really have to have the printer unless you just want to print a model to check your dies. But, the way we did this is the first 10 or so, we didn't trust it. We didn't know what to expect. So I actually paid to have the crowns made both ways. And we kind of saw that the pretty big majority, we were picking the purely digital made one over the analog.
Wow.
So, after that point, I didn't really see any point in continuing on to do the analog, and I didn't really see the need to do a die either. I think a lot of that comes down to your lab. My lab that I was using at that time, man, they just killed it, and I never had to touch this stuff. And so, what do I want a working model for?
That's pretty fascinating that you actually did kind of a split test, essentially.
There was one done by Itero as well. Itero did a really cool longitudinal study where they.
Well, I wonder where their bias was, though, pal.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't know. It came out very positive for Itero.
Well, what we found is that PVS impressions are actually a lot more accurate than our Itero.
Yeah, probably not going to see that study.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, back to your point earlier. In theory, I do think that your premise is right in that, the more steps you add into the process, the more potential there is for issues.
Mm-hmm.
But, in my experience, it's so negligible that it was irrelevant in my end results, and I think if you're a dentist that's taken garbage PVS impressions, then you're going to take double garbage digital impressions, and the lab can't save you either case. And if you're doing great impressions, you're going to probably take great impressions with either method, and your results are going to be so good either way, it won't matter. I was having great results with models. I got great results with digital. It just didn't seem to matter either way. Yep.
So walk us, you were going through, and I interrupted you about kind of like some of the applications of printing essentially aligners, digital dentures. Are you doing a lot of like guards and orthotics?
Well, I mean, you could. I'm not, just simply because I'm not.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah.
But yeah, I think that's an application that you could. There's materials out there that you can print, not guards and appliances. So that's a great application.
I guess from a business perspective, what I would want to do as an owner of a practice, I would want to make sure that I would want to recoup my ROI, whether it was 8,000 or 50,000, as fast as possible, so I could see the value to my practice, other than me just wanting to kind of play with toys, right? And so do you have a workflow that you can get someone, because all it's going to take is that light bulb switching that says, holy shit, this is the pathway, like this is it. I got it. And so, but I think if you look at it like this, all the stuff, all these videos you do on YouTube, like literally I watched that and I'm like, I can't do that. I don't have the all this software. Like I can't learn that. And so, but I think if I had tiptoed in it, and if you had told me like a pathway for like, digital 101 or whatever, that you were like, okay, do this first and then kind of master this and then do this. And then, keep dipping your toe further and further in.
Okay, so I'm looking at a couple models here let me just run you through some questions and let's see if you can get an ROI on it. So are either of you doing clear aligner ortho at all?
Yeah, tons, me.
Craig, that's all he does, actually.
Okay,
personally.
Cool. So you don't have to say what company you're using, but what's your lab bill for, let's say, an upper or lower case?
Well, the normal lab bill, $1,800, but
what's yours?
At my level,
you're getting the discount, right?
Yeah, probably like $1,200.
$1,200.
Yeah, $1,200.
Let's say your average Joe, or let's push it. Let's use your number. Okay, so you're at $1,200.
Yeah.
Are you able to push a button on a computer? Is that within your skill set?
That's
a little bit facetious question, right?
Yeah. I got on the podcast.
You can take your digital model, right? You can upload it into Blue Sky Plan, and let's say you don't want to learn any software at all, right? That's not in your wheelhouse. You don't want to do it. So you can push this button within Blue Sky Plan called Lab Pronto. Think of it kind of like Uber for dental laboratory services. And so you can have someone snatch that out of the cloud, and within 6-8 hours, you've got back the full digital ortho treatment plan. You can tell them I want weekly trays, monthly, bi-weekly, whatever, but they'll make it to those specs.
By whom? By whom? Like some
lab technicians. Now these, like for example, I'm looking at. Let's see. Can y'all see those?
That's freaking awesome.
This is yeah. So I just had this done. It's a case I'm doing for my orthodontic buddy, and we're doing a charity case. And so we threw these into the cloud. 6 hours later, I had these things done, and I know the technician that did it. It's Darren Thronson at IDT Dental Lab in
Yeah, I know him. Darren Thronson? I know who he is, yeah.
So Darren planned this case and designed them and gave me back the models, and now all I have to do is print. Okay, so I print these models. I don't remember how many this case is, but let's say it's 20 aligners, upper and lower. So you can't yet print the aligners, but you would print the models, and then you just make your pressure form thing, something that any remotely competent dental assistant ought to be able to do. The doctor shouldn't be doing this.
Wait, what'd you say? Make a what for them?
Make the pressure form aligner.
Oh, like an S6 suck down.
Yeah, you take your S6 0.75 or whatever, and you pressure form it, and that's it. And so and it cost me $195 to outsource that, and Darren had it done in 6 hours back to me. So I'm $200 in, and then you're going to be looking at maybe $1 per model to print it and $1 worth of suck down material. And so
and how much time roughly? Like, I'm just trying to think of human hours, like of making the trays and all that stuff. Like, how much time would be involved in that?
The time, if you've got an assistant that is relatively sharp, they're going to be doing these rapid fire, right? They're going to get a batch. They're going to do probably 10 of them at a time, and it's just boom, 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 boom. And so I don't know specifically. So
it's essentially like 10 Essex retainers kind of thing? I mean, is that essentially what it is?
Yeah, you stick. So these models, the teeth have been sequentially moved a little bit from model to model, and they just pop this one into the mini star, pressure form it. Take it out, stick this one in.
But you got to trim them all, right? I mean, I don't do lab.
You do have to trim it, but there's some really efficient stuff. Baron Drutter, for example, has got a nice assistant training, and Baron does the best job of this. He's kind of the ortho point man on Blue Sky Plan, but he really lays out the numbers for those guys that say, it's labor intensive, I don't want to do that. Basically, if you do like 2 to 3 cases a month, you can hire another full-time assistant who will pay them for themselves. You don't need to do that because this is definitely something.
Look at the disintermediation of the lab tech here.
Here comes the blockchain talk, Cory.
No, it's not the blockchain talk. It's amazing how, like, we have our own in-house lab. So you get these, technologically skilled people that have no understanding of dental anatomy that are cruising. You got these guys that understand the art of anatomy. Like even Pinchas Adar is doing monolithic zirconia now. He was the stacking feldspathic guy from Goldstein Garber, and now he's doing monolithic zirconia veneers on Miss Georgia.
No, not monolithic. They're graded. I mean, they're
monolithic. There's a gradient within the zirconia.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You have a block that has incisal body and all that, but there's no feldspathic stacked on top of it. It's just crazy to me and now you're talking about an assistant. It's true. So now you have an assistant. Like I'm looking in my own practice, not for another lab employee. I'm looking for an assistant that can learn how to design and mill CEREC crowns. So I'm looking for one of those assistants that's mid-level. That's like, hey, do you want a really cool career path? I'll send you for CEREC training, advanced CEREC training, and you'll be a CEREC designer.
A quick aside on that note, if I could go back into practice tomorrow, I would have a dedicated employee that I hired that only did this digital stuff. And one of their jobs would be that every single hygiene patient that came in and we asked if they even had the slightest amount of inclination towards aesthetic treatment, then we're going to do digital models, and that person is going to be capable of doing digital wax ups. How many times have you done a wax up, transferred it into the patient's mouth, they look at hopefully the end result, and then not done the case?
It never happened to me.
It actually happened to me just the other day, but I have a saying for this, Cory, is that you can't unring the bell when you show them what they can look like.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Imagine trying to sell a Mercedes by description. Like you go to the Mercedes-Benz dealership and you're like interested in the C-Class because that's $300 a month. And all of a sudden, like you're in the E-Class, like, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. And then you sit in the S-Class. And like you can't unring that bell. You're like, damn, I could probably liquidate my 401k and, no big deal. I just won't go out to dinner. I'll just spend the $1,200 a month and I'll eat ramen noodles. But I mean, we as dentists, you have to be a maverick treatment plan person. You have to do all your emotions, but you could be anybody and put that skin in.
You can be terrible.
Yeah, Invisalign figured this out. My lab tech was just in San Francisco. Invisalign has scanning centers. They're free.
Yeah.
You walk in, you get an outcome simulator, and you get to see what you're going to look like.
So,
okay,
Cory,
so you both agree with me on that. So
yeah, keep going down that pathway, which you would do. I like that.
If that's the answer, and hardly anyone ever says no, then why don't you do it on every person?
Right. Why are you spending $500 a month on Yelp ads and $1,000 a month on pay-per-click when you could just spend $500 a month on doing digital wax ups on everybody? That's real value.
And what I was going to say is the reason you don't do it is that no one's giving away wax ups, right? But if you can now digitize that so that now I can do the wax up in 20 minutes and I just print the model, make a pressure form or whatever over it, or even better, you can directly print kind of in essence like a snap-on smile and just stick it in their mouth. So, you get them back or at their next hygiene visit, you say, hey, we kind of mocked up, your case. Would you want to see what it looks like in your mouth? And you pop it in. I would have to think that your aesthetic case acceptance would
skyrocket.
Yeah, it would.
And so that alone would be such a tremendous practice builder that I would have a dedicated employee that only did that. And then if they had dead time, they'd be making ortho aligners. And then if they had dead time beyond that, they'd be making digital dentures.
Or printing night guards or whatever.
Yes, the digital guru is the next full-time position in a dental office.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And what's cool about it too, sorry, Greg, and we've talked about this before, but it really could almost be a gamer, like someone who really can do, doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm this clinical badass with these great hands. Like you could almost be a gamer that has a high level acumen of computer technology, and CAD CAM doesn't frighten you, and spatial relationships, and really have a cool career in dentistry now.
For sure.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, it's true. So quick question then. This is what DSD is trying to do. So Coachman is, why are you smiling?
Me?
I'm not.
No. I'm looking at Peter. Peter's just like watching my steps very carefully how I navigate through this one. No, but this is what DSD will tell you. I mean, I haven't done the course and I love Chris Coachman, but Peter, great guy and doing great things for the profession. So what is the difference between what you're saying and DSD?
Probably about $1,000 per case.
Right.
I mean, bottom line, it's money. I mean,
Right.
Yes, that is an amazing service, and probably I've never done it, but I'm sure it's incredible. But they're not giving it away. Whereas I can use Blue Sky Plan, I can use Mesh Mixer, for goodness sake, which is not even a dental software, and I can do this by myself immediately. I don't have to outsource it to anyone else, and then I just print it. So I'm sure they're doing a higher level of service, but at what point does that become necessary?
Well, walk me through the workflow. In theory, I could take and correct me any part I'm wrong in this. New patient comes in, I take an iTero scan on them, I export that file to the Blue Sky company, right?
Well, no, just our software is free. You can download it right now. It's just Blue Sky Plan. So
okay, Blue Sky Plan.
Now you open those scans up in Blue Sky Plan.
Okay, so then I manipulate a digital wax up, or I could pay your company to do it. Correct?
We don't do it. We're Uber, right? We facilitate
They're just the
connecting
connection.
You
okay.
to the cloud to.
Okay, so Darren Thronson picks it up, says I want to do it.
Yep.
He does it. He charges me blank dollars, sends the STL file back to me. I print a model, make a Siltec index, try it in the patient's mouth, and we move forward, right?
Yeah, or unless you do what I mentioned, which is directly print the thing so that it just slides onto the top of their teeth. That's even less costly because now you don't have the material of the putty.
But that putty is such an awesome transfer. You put a putty in, it looks like the final result. So then my question is,
you want to see my Snap-on Smile?
Yeah, please.
So I'll show you mine. This.
Wow, that's good, man.
Some gold.
Really
what is your alter ego that you call yourself when you wear that? Just out of curiosity, Cory.
I just call myself Cory.
Because that doesn't really fit like Cory Glenn from Winchester, Texas. When you wear that.
Yeah. So no, I just put some gold leaf on that. But what that started out as was just experimenting with this technique and just directly printing up in bleach shade crown and bridge material a proposed wax up on myself. I ground the crap out of my teeth and I added back the length based on my pictures. And then instead of doing the whole transfer thing and wasting material and putty and all that, I just printed that thing off and it slid right on my teeth.
Wow.
Amazing. I mean, I'm just blown away. And then let's take that step a little further. So now you've tried in this mock-up, you have a working model, you try the mock-up, patients like Golden, I love this. You can then, how would you then, like, let's just say you put the temporaries in, everything's perfect. They say, I want this duplicated. I want my new smile to look exactly like this. Take us down the next step.
Exactly like you would do with any crown and bridge case, old school technique, right? Now you start out with a pre-op model, and I would impress that in the state that the patient loves. I'd do pictures with it, and then we'd start prepping. And you prep not from where they are, but from the ideal aesthetic endpoint, right? So 2 millimeters through the wax up.
Yeah, reverse prep almost.
Yeah, you're reverse prepping. You do your preparations, you take your impression, send it off to the lab, you refabricate their temps based again on that pre-op impression that you did. So you've got your putty transfer, and the lab simply has to make the restorations basically biocopy for the people that do CEREC. You're biocopying what it looked like that they loved. Yeah,
so even in theory, you could imagine the implications of this for all-on-4 and other things. So imagine if you're changing someone's vertical, you could let them roll with their temporaries for 6 weeks, dial in all their interferences, get their bite totally comfortable, and then scan that and transfer that. Because if you're doing it the old school way, you're never going to get 100% transference of that. You're going to get new interferences and stuff like that. So that's pretty badass. And then also look at it for all-on-4, trying and, wax and then digitizing that. I mean, I get the big barrier to this whole thing. And sorry, because I just want to get this one point out, is that it's not in the world of lab tech. It's not really in the world of dentist yet. So dentists are better off. They're like, screw it. I know it's super freaking inefficient to do it the old school way, but while I'm dicking around with a 3D printer, I could be prepping another case. Or
True. I don't think the dentists, unless they're one like me that likes it, though, should be the one doing that.
Right.
I mean,
So
3D printing with something like a Moonray or Form 2, it's not that technical. I mean, you know, that you load it in the software and you push print and it does it, you know, and then you pull it off and clean it off in some alcohol. It's not that technical, really. So part of why we developed that Lab Pronto is that what is extremely big learning curve is that whole design aspect.
Yeah.
Right. That one whips dentists. You know, for the longest there, I got the bad name. All these things look like these chewing gum or whatever. It wasn't a flaw of the machine. It's that it's junk in, junk out. And the dentist or the assistant, for the most part, we kind of suck at designing. And so that's been the effort with, you know, this whole Lab Pronto thing is, okay, so maybe you've got an in-house mill, but maybe you don't want to design. And so you can completely outsource that now. Push the Uber button, someone else does it, gives you back a flawless design that now you just mill it or print it or whatever, and it's taken that aspect off your plate. You don't have to have the stress of it, and it's just a lot simpler.
That's so cool. That's such a great idea, because you're right. The design and looking at the software is so daunting. But, you know, back to my original question about how do you tiptoe in, like, can you scan and do you have a printer and then hit the Uber button or the Pronto button?
That's the cheapest point of entry is the free software, a printer, and a scanner.
That's pretty neat. And you say free software because you guys, Blue Sky Bio charges per export to STL.
Right. The Blue Sky plan is free software, and then the only charge associated with it is, again, a per export. So some stuff like the dentures and the ortho right now, those are in beta, so there's no charge at all on that. Eventually it'll be like the surgical guide where you know, maybe it's $15 or whatever, but I'll do that all day long. I don't care.
Cory, can you talk about where the denture technology is? I know it's, you know, sometimes dentures are not hot and sexy as veneers and smile designs and such, right. But honestly, I always tell people that it's, you know, it's the fundamentals for everything that we do, the setting it up. And can you talk a little bit
down? One of the most important things that I think a newer, younger dentist should learn. I always make the joke in my courses about how, you know, you get out of dental school and you say, I'm never doing another denture. And yet you go pay John Coyce or Frank Spears $60,000, $80,000 to teach you full mouth rehab. Well, if you'd have just done all those denture cases, it would have been 100%. Free, right? You might have even gotten $10 from Delta Dental for making their denture. But it's all those principles.
BDO, that's one of the most.
BDO, how do you make aesthetics, right? What's the occlusal plane?
Yeah.
If you know it with dentures, which are easy to correct if you screw it up, then you can translate all that to implant full mouth rehabs.
That's my Invisalign. That's my Invisalign practice was my denture technique, understanding it's the same thing in the ClinCheck software. You move the teeth just like you did in wax.
Yep.
So,
I love dentures, but you know, the dilemma with them has always been that the insurance reimbursement is very poor for it, and yet the lab bill is one of the highest of any service that we do, and the time involved, you know, 5 appointments, the way most of us are taught, and so it's a losing battle on all fronts, and the people that need the dentures are usually the least able to pay that high price it should command. And so that's, you know, digital dentures have been around a while, but they've not really solved those issues, right? They didn't really cut down on the time. They were even more expensive than traditional analog. So instead of being $300, now you got a $400 per arch lab bill. It makes no sense. And so that's what we were trying to remedy with the Blue Sky Denture software is how do we cut down on appointments? How do we make it a lot more affordable? And so now essentially you can design it 1, maximum 2 appointments, and then you can deliver that final denture. Your costs are going to be just an export fee. Your cost of printing materials. I did the math on one that I showed, I think, on Dental Town, and it ended up being like
$14,
$18, something like that. It was
I think I remember you doing that. My jaw dropped. I was like, $18?
I made so many technicians mad with that post. I mean, I got
look at how many
hate mail like you wouldn't believe.
Well, look at globally. Look at how many.
That's when you know you're doing something right, by the way, pal.
Yeah. Look at how many taxi drivers had a medallion for $1 million to operate a taxi. Look at how many travel agents are pissed at Orbitz. You know, I mean, everything is getting disrupted. You know,
it is. And what I try to tell those people is, you know, you're crying about it today, and 5 years from now, you're going to be doing it and you won't be out of business. It'll be just like the guys that shamed the people using CAD/CAM crowns, and now they all do it, and it's made their life better and more efficient. It's just people don't like change. I get it. So whatever.
So what are the materials? Like, how does that work? I don't want to get too in the weeds, like Craig's saying, or too granular, but like, is it there for, is the tech ready to deploy in dentures, like ready to go, like from the material standpoint, the 3D printing?
Yeah. So you've got 3 options as I see it. Grab one right here. This is printed teeth in white and then a printed base in pink, and then you just bond them together. So that's going to be your cheapest option.
You what them together? You spawned?
Bond.
Oh, bond. I was like, what the hell? I was like, you've already lost me. I'm like, now you have to use trout and shit.
Yeah.
Like, you're gonna have
spawning
trout.
You could do a monolithic denture and then just put on some pink gingiva. This is kind of my favorite right now. It's the strongest because it is all monolithic.
What material is that, Cory?
This is Crown and Bridge MFH from Next Dent.
And that's on the Moonray?
Yeah, that's
what is MFH?
I think it's microfilled hybrid composite. It's a
nanoceramic
composite resin. Yeah,
it's a nanoceramic.
Yeah, I literally this whole podcast, I feel like this geezer. Like, what are you kids talking about? You and your rap music.
You and your spawning and your MFH. I don't even know.
Got a deer hanging from his wall, Peter. I mean, this is freaking me out, man.
I love him. Hey, you know, my in-laws are from Mississippi. I'm down with the trophies on the wall.
No, I'm kidding with you. I'm into it too. I'm just joking. Keep going. So MFH is that's your favorite one because of its strength.
Yeah, and it's just a simpler workflow. There's nothing to bond together after the fact. I can apply that gingiva in minutes. Very simple.
What is that gingiva? The gingiva is a composite that's bonded on.
Yeah, NX gum. You could also use GC. What is theirs called?
GC America.
Yeah.
Yeah, GC's got a gingival composite. Gradia gum.
Oh yeah, Gradia direct. Yeah.
So tell me, why were there holes on that? Was that a hybrid?
All on 4. Yep.
Wow.
This is ready to go on this.
Show us that. So that's an all-on-4 that's going to be picked up in the mouth and converted.
Yes, it is a denture, but it's got the holes pre-made so that when you do your guided surgery and your osteotomies end up in that position, the holes are already made for the pickup, and your conversion is just a piece of cake.
And you're picking up with a light-cured composite?
Whatever you want. You can use light-cured composite or acrylic.
You know how much easier that is, though? How much more precise and easy? That's so freaking cool.
Oh, there's no question.
Yeah, and then you grind away the flanges and you've converted.
Right. Or, you know, I'll tell you another one that this is like a big show and tell type.
I love it. I didn't know we'd get this treat.
Yeah, glad you weren't strapped to your desktop.
Maybe it's good that the computer didn't work. You know, the other thing I'm doing, and I don't know that I can find it, but basically I make a shell, and so it's the entire hybrid already cut down with flanges, already with holes made, but it's a 0.5 millimeter thickness of material, so that finding your cylinders is a piece of cake, and then you just load that thing up with Visacryl or acrylic or whatever, and the pickup is just super, super easy with minimal finishing.
What we're doing right now is so freaking backwards, man. It is crazy. I mean, what
ever done that is
what we're doing now is we have an acrylic temporary, right? And after the acrylic temporary is all dialed in, we do a wax try-in, then we fabricate a titanium bar, and then we try to build it all back again. It's so ass backwards, man. It's crazy.
Right.
And the funny thing is that in dentistry,
then you break it. You almost always break those things before you.
Yeah. So who came up with the idea that the holy grail of structural integrity is the substructure? I don't give a crap about my substructure. Like porcelain fused to zirconia, like, oh, zirconia is unbreakable. You're not going to break a coping. You chip the laminating porcelain. Right. And so a patient, when their facial porcelain breaks off, that is a catastrophic failure. Like, I don't know, like the bar that we do, when we do a titanium bar with acrylic on it, the bar doesn't break.
Terrible. I hate those.
I know, but the bar doesn't break.
No.
It's the porcelain cracks. Yeah. And to a patient, they don't care. So why is it that the biomechanical engineers are tucked away in their labs telling people about substructure strengths when it's the laminating? The failure is the laminating, the vinyl siding, as my lab tech calls it.
Yeah.
Pretty stuff.
Right.
So it's just broken.
So yeah, that's I think if you're into full arch dentistry for implants, man, I think you're insane if you don't have all this stuff, because there is just so much you can do with that. Back to the denture thing, if you like traditional dentures, and I think they're still probably the strongest, but what you can do is you can print off the base, stick in the teeth, and then just send this to the lab and let them conventionally process it. So when I try that, it's I have Burbank Dental Lab, but all I'm paying them to do is process. And so now my denture lab bill goes from $350 down to just $100. Still way quicker.
What are they doing? They're laminating the whole thing with acrylic, or they're eluting?
No. They're in. So what do you do with traditional denture processing, right? You flask it, you invest it, you boil out, and the teeth are left, and then you pack or press or inject acrylic. Well, they're doing the exact same thing. It's just now we're eliminating all that hand setting of teeth and the wax and everything.
So wait, those teeth, show me that thing again. Your camera's moving. I want to see what that looks like.
Well, this is just a final denture.
No, the one with the holes where the reception receptor.
You're set on the holes, aren't you?
No. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Cory. The last one you just picked up, the one that you just loop the teeth into. Yes, that one.
Sockets.
Yeah, sockets.
So this is designed such that it has the sockets, and you just take whatever the corresponding real physical teeth are, and you just pop them in there.
So the sockets are, how does it know, like if those are Ivoclar sockets or whatever, is that built into something?
Right now, it's just what STLs we have in the software. So in our initial beta, the companies that has given us up their STLs is Nobilium. And so those are Nobilium teeth. Got it.
So you would literally physically wax those in, flask it, boil out, and then press acrylic into it. And the acrylic would just be in the socket tooth junction.
Well, no. So once they've invested it, think of this as being wax.
That burns out?
Comes out. Well, it doesn't burn out, but once you've flasked it, this gets completely removed, and the only thing left in the flask is the negative where this was, and the actual denture teeth. So now they can do Ivo base, they can do
so that's why it reduces the cost. That's why it reduces the cost, because
all they're doing is processing now.
Processing it.
The cost in dentures is in the wax try-in, it's in the fabrication of base plates and all that tedious lab work that you've got to do for that. We eliminate all of that because we go straight to a so-called wax try-in, but what it really is a printed base with the teeth stuck in there, the real teeth, and maybe just a tiny little drop of wax to hold them in place.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
Man, this is blowing my freaking brain.
My mind's going crazy right now. So, Cory, do you have courses, right? That like if we wanted to know more or our listeners wanted to know more, don't you do some courses and some continuums?
I do. Yeah,
okay.
I do. I just kind of do a hodgepodge of different courses, but they're all on CoryGlenn.org. So that's where I post them.
Okay. And all right. And Craig, do you have any questions on that?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully in the show notes we can go over how to learn all that stuff. But this is, I'm just blown away, man. I'm blown away because I see what's possible, but then it's also like really frustrating that this is like when for the older people out there, this is like when Napster came out and I had just come back from like Tower Records buying $60 worth of Guns N' Roses CDs or whatever. Like I could have got this all for free. It just blows my mind. But it's actually better.
No question there's a learning curve, and it's easy for those of us that have been in it for long enough to think, oh, it's no big deal. You go in a mesh mixer and you do a Boolean subtraction and people are looking like, you're an alien or something. So I try not to minimize that there is a learning curve, but again, that's where I think this hybrid approach of maybe, yes, you've got the printer and the mill and the acquisition stuff of a scanner, but maybe you don't ever even want to learn all that design stuff, and you don't have to now.
Yeah, that's true.
It's pretty cool. All right. So yeah, Craig, we will definitely get that stuff up. Cory, you've got my mind literally is racing, like with all the applications of the stuff you just talked about. It's fascinating. And man, I think you're doing, I courted you to get you on this podcast because I've been following you for a long time. I hit you up on Facebook Messenger because like I really think you're changing the direction of the industry, and you're massively influential in the digital space. And I thank you for what you're doing and pressing on, even as you're not even seeing clinical patients anymore. You're really doing it just for the, you know, the betterment of the profession. I want to thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, this stuff is a hobby to me. I mean, I enjoy it. It is kind of still my job too, but I mean, I've got this warp in me that something about me just loves to beat the man. So if I can figure out a cheaper or an easier way to do it, that's, you know, I'll do that to a fault.
It's actually cheaper, easier, better.
Well, I mean, that's the goal.
It's better. So it's a patient focus as well to save patients visits. And I mean, listen, if you have a 3D printed denture, it doesn't matter that it's not as strong because, you know, how much does it cost you to print another one or to do another one of these? It's all stored in the cloud.
And that's just a matter of time until the materials catch up. Like, yes, we're in our infancy with printing of the materials, but like they're going to get stronger and they're going to advance and get, you know, more beautiful, more aesthetic, more, you know, it's all going to, it's definitely the pathway. And I appreciate you for taking us down that path. And I'm seriously looking at attending, having me and some of my docs attend your stuff coming up. I'm looking at your schedule now. And I will say, Cory,
I got muted there for a second because my wife was calling, but I'm still here.
Anyway, and I was basically just saying how I was looking at your courses because I want me and some of my docs to go and really just kind of start diving into this space. I mean, we do it now, but really diving in at your level would be really neat. And as I'm reading your bio or your Meet Cory Glenn part, I will have you know, Cory, that I cut my hair with a Flowbee in high school.
My man.
I see that you are a Flowbeer.
I'm a Flowbee.
I have many haircuts underneath my that have been Flowbeeized.
I wouldn't go pay the barber, you know.
Yeah, I mean that goes
at home. You know?
That goes with your whole thing, man.
To this day, my dad still cuts his hair with a Flowbee, and we bought it I bet you we bought that thing 30 years ago. And I can't tell you how much money he's probably saved. Not to mention, it's just such a great idea. It sucks the hair up. You don't have all the hair all over. Such a great idea.
If you ever need it, so I broke a couple of my little, you know, the height attachments. So I scanned them in and I 3D printed some. 3D printed them. Of course you did. Supply of 3D printable Flowbee heads.
I bet that's not the only thing in your house that's been 3D printed.
Yeah.
No, there's plenty of things.
Did you 3D print your wife or?
No. No. That would get you in trouble.
Yeah, that will.
Well, Cory, I appreciate you taking the time with us, man, and definitely going to circle up with you off podcast land, if you will, because I want to I'm have some follow-up questions and would love to get you back on maybe later in the year and just kind of show the progression of how quickly this industry is moving along. Maybe we can do a follow-up, but I truly appreciate your time, and man, it's been awesome. So thank you.
Yeah, guys, good talking to you.
Amazing, Cory. Thank you, buddy. Just blew my mind, man. So cool. So very cool.
Well, good. Yeah. Great talking to you guys.
All right, man. Have a great rest of the evening.
Okay.
Cool. All right, bye-bye.